The teen girl had become a rather terrifying force in movies and TVs at the end of the 20th century. Adults just couldn't understand what was going on with these teens, and so this fearful outsider perspective informed on-screen portrayals. But as the 2000s and 2010s rolled around, the terrifying teen girl on screen began to enter a new, more powerful phase. These stories actually grappled with the harsh, conflicting realities that teen girls have to deal with, and many felt much more real because now they were actually written by people who had, actually experienced being a teen girl instead of just outside observers. From lack of control to oversexualization to the intricacies of war in girl world, these teens were constantly being pushed to the edge, but they were always up for the challenge.
Hell is a teenage girl.
Like the movies of the 80s and 90s, the teen girl in the 2000s and 2010s continued to terrify her parents with the potency and possibility of her body.
No bra, no panties. No bra, no panties. Stop it.
But Juno, a definitive teen pregnancy movie, is a great example of how the way scriptwriters told this story was shifting. While Juno's parents are initially horrified by her pregnancy...
Did you see that coming when she sat us down here?
Yeah, but I was hoping she was expelled or into her drugs.
That was my first instinct, too. Or a DWI. Anything but this.
They come around and support her admirably. It's a film where this story of the teen girl's sexuality as a ticking time bomb changes, and her agency is finally explored. After writing Juno, a film about a teenager who gets pregnant, Diablo Cody wrote Jennifer's Body. Cody said that the friendships that I had as an adolescent had this unparalleled intensity. I wanted to show how almost horrific that devotion can be. It's almost parasitic.
I just know that I woke up and I found my way back to you. I couldn't bring myself to hurt you.
The teen girl's intensity is explored a lot in the movies of the 2000s and 2010s. And like the movies that came before in the 80s and 90s, high school provided the perfect backdrop for this intensity to take on a sinister edge. By this stage, it was accepted that high school girls were cruel. But the movies of the 2000s and 2010s solidified this and began to toy with it further, picking apart the intensity of high school friendships and politics to create even deeper comments on that cruelty and, most importantly, what was really behind it.
I just think you should be honest about your feelings. Otherwise it starts coming out in passive-aggressive ways.
Jennifer's Body, for example, features a supernaturally beautiful Megan Fox as a demonically possessed teenager.
No, I mean, she's actually evil. Not high school evil. I've been through the occult section at the library 5 times.
Mean Girls, on the other hand, explores the way that high school can function as a dictatorship, with Regina George acting as an unelected, despotic leader.
She's the queen bee, the star. Those other two are just her little workers.
And in John Tucker Must Die, 3 beautiful high schoolers, all powerful in their own ways, band together with another girl to destroy the eponymous John Tucker after he cheats on them with one another.
So, what are you girls up to? Destroying a man.
One film that revolutionized the portrayal of teenage girls in the early 2000s was 13, which was co-written by Nikki Reed, who was actually a teenager at the time. It chronicles a relatively short period of time in 2 teen girls' lives where they meet and form an intoxicatingly close friendship that centers on sex and drugs. The unbridled intensity of Tracy and Evie and the real, raw way their story was showcased was shocking to audiences, particularly because unlike many other movies which featured older actresses playing teens and even tweens, these characters were portrayed by Reed and Evan Rachel Wood, both young teenagers themselves.
I want to bleed more! Hit me!
The movie's gritty realism becomes even more stark, and the characters become even more frightening to adult viewers when we're reminded towards the end that the girls are only in 7th grade. Adding to the intensity of the teen girl's life, social media starts to make an appearance in the teen-focused horror movies of the 2000s and 2010s, in films such as Friend Request and Unfriended. The pervasive, seemingly inescapable nature of social media in teen girls' relationships is explored in these films. The way that teen girls no longer have to be together in person to experience those intense, suffocating relationships with one another. When Blair Lilly bullies her childhood friend Laura to end her life, Laura's vengeful spirit returns through social networking sites, determined to torture her former friends just as badly. The intensity of the drama and rage at play might feel a bit over the top, and indeed, in most cases, it was ratcheted up to a wild degree for horror or comedy, or both.
Even when we were little, he used to steal my toys and pour lemonade on my bed. And now I'm eating your boyfriend. See? At least I'm consistent.
But underneath it all was something that felt very real, and this was in large part thanks to the fact that the scripts were coming not from men who had just been brought in by a studio to write about some teen girls, but by people like Cody and Mean Girls writer Tina Fey, who had actually lived it and were using their scripts to unpack their own experiences. The teen girl was no longer just a cardboard stereotype or a vector for adult fears. She was becoming respected as a full, complex, and dangerous person in her own right. In The Hole, Liz, a private school student, is willing to brutally sacrifice several of her classmates by trapping them in an underground bunker, all in the name of getting closer to the boy she likes.
Have you ever loved someone so much that you didn't care what happened to yourself? You just had to be with them.
And this intensity around relationships with boys and men is one that repeats across films of this era, which often cast the teenage girl as a seductress, like for example in Midsommar with the character of Maja, who seduces Christian into impregnating her. She's 15, but within the cult she plays a powerful role as a newly fertile woman. Or Jennifer, who starts out as a regular high school hot girl and becomes a literal succubus.
These are like smart bombs, okay? You point them in the right direction and shit gets real.
Throughout the 1980s and 90s, though she may not have been legal, the teen girl was presented as sexually aware and manipulative with it.
You sure you're only 14?
Almost 15.
Looking back on this time, academics, like in essay collection Screening #MeToo Rape Culture in Hollywood, have argued that with this positioning, framing teen girls as being the ones in power in all of their relationships, particularly with older men, Hollywood contributed to society's larger rape culture problem in a major way. While things did start to change in the 2000s and 2010s, this factor of the scary teen girl didn't totally go away. Take Swim Fan, which vilifies Madison, a one-dimensional teenage stalker who is hell-bent on ruining a promising swimmer's life after a one-night stand.
Madison, I think that you're misunderstanding our relationship in a very fundamental way.
There's even the long-running morality trope in horror films where the most promiscuous teens get killed off first.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex.
It's a way for those films to exploit her sexuality while also making sure to punish her dearly for it.
My heart was pounding, knowing that any second someone was gonna jump out and grab me. I didn't know whether I was gonna have a heart attack or an orgasm.
But other stories explore what might happen if a teenage girl got to fight back, if she got to take control of the body that had for so long been oppressed by other people. That's when we start to see. Often these movies depict the teenage girl as functioning under barely contained simmering rage. Hard Candy, for example, directly calls out the heart of a major issue, that young women and girls are lower in the social hierarchy than powerful men, and that thanks to the culture that these men have orchestrated, there's very little recourse for them when they're wronged by these men.
It'll ruin my career, it'll ruin my life.
Why didn't Roman Polanski just win an Oscar?
So the main character turns to violence, torturing a photographer who she's convinced murdered another teenage girl.
I am every little girl you ever watched, touched, hurt, screwed, killed.
In comedy horror Teeth, on the other hand, lead character Dawn has a mythical condition known as vagina dentata. And as she comes up against a series of men who want to hurt her, she is able to brutally injure them while they are vulnerable.
The myth springs from a primitive masculine dread of the mysteries of women in sexual union. It is a nightmare image of the power and horror of female sexuality.
In these narratives, the teen girl is able to claw back some of her agency. She shows the men who desire her that although she may be beautiful, she's also powerful, and that's terrifying.
I am going to eat your soul and shit it out, Mickey!
Ma shows the consequences of teen bullying. The character of Sue-Ann is so traumatized by the sexual assault she experienced at the hands of the popular kids in school that she exhibits dangerous, coercive behavior herself in adulthood. She has remained stunted in her emotional development at the point in time where this happened, making her a terrifying teen girl in an adult's body.
Please, Sue-Ann. I was just a kid.
So was I,
Mean Girls analyzes how this rage is simmering within every girl for one reason or another, because she's held back by a society that won't let her reach her full potential, because she was wronged, because she feels trapped, because she's lost herself, and how this all becomes a high school powder keg that can blow at any minute.
Whatever. Those rules aren't real. They were real that day I wore a vest. Because that vest was disgusting. You can't sit with us!
They're all vicious in their attacks on one another because of how they've been molded by the harsh world they inhabit, and this becomes their key revelation in the end. They don't really want revenge on each other, but to break down the society that had harmed them all. In the 2000s, the teenage witch wasn't explored as thoroughly as she had been in the 80s and 90s, but she returned with a vengeance in the 2010s, thanks in part to the Me Too movement and an uptick in female anger. Women and their allies were being accused of witch hunts constantly in the media, as increasingly they found the strength to come forward and name powerful male abusers.
This is not a witch hunt. It's a reckoning, and I want him out.
So it was high time for a teen witch renaissance. This time, she'd been reincarnated and was no longer solely the domain of cisgender white girls. English lecturer Miranda Cochran writes that by this point, works produced by writers of color have moved the witch away from her heteronormative, Eurocentric roots. So in the 2010s, we get black characters like American Horror Story's Queenie.
Stop it, you bitch! Stop what? I don't feel nothing. I'm a human voodoo doll.
And Prudence from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
So you're going to tell us how to stop it? Well, my next needle goes in through your ear.
And these teen witches were often out for vengeance against abusers and the powerful structures that enable them. In The Witch, for example, downtrodden eldest daughter Thomasin has experienced sexualization by her brother and abuse from her parents. She's lived in a Puritan household, blamed for her family's misfortunes and without enough to eat. So when she's offered something more at the end of the movie, she seizes the opportunity.
What's that like to live deliciously?
Yes.
What's that like to see the world?
Writer Rodham Rusak sees Thomasin's deference to witchcraft as an allegory for queerness, that she's finally found her chosen family at the end of the movie, when she goes to levitate with the coven. As the 2010s closed, it became apparent that the teenage witch had a new lease of life, and that she was scarier than ever because she was completely self-aware and turning all her energy against the forces that had previously suppressed her. In the 2000s and 2010s, the on-screen teen girl found her voice in earnest, and unluckily for the people who got in her way, she was angry. In many movies and shows of the era, her behavior became even more extreme, and while this shocked audiences, it wasn't necessarily fictitious. In real life, teen girls were angry too, and they were using their voices to shout for change. These girls paved the way for the terrifying on-screen teen girls of the 2020s, who we'll meet in the next take. That's the take. Click here to watch a video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.